All right, well, why don't we go ahead and get started? Looks like we've got a good number of participants joining us today. Well, welcome everyone. I am Bodie Moore, and I'm the site administrator of the Anthracite Heritage Museum in Eckley Miners Village. And welcome to Charter Day 2021. This is a special Zoom program. In fact, the last program that we had before COVID hit was Charter Day 2020. So we're glad to be back and hoping that things are start going much better with the COVID, and that we can look at reopening in the next couple of months. Both Eckley and Anthracite are still closed to the public, although our open spaces like the Eckley Village and the Scranton Iron Furnaces are open for casual visiting. And I just want to encourage you all to keep an eye on our website and our Facebook page for details about reopening when we do. Hopefully that'll be sometime this spring. Nothing is guaranteed yet. And when we do, it'll be sort of a soft opening for a couple of months, Friday, Saturday, Sundays to the public. And then maybe by the summer, we'll see things opening up a little bit better. And again, thanks again for joining us. We've got a really interesting program today. Joining us are John Fielding, curator of the Ampersite Heritage Museum in Eckley Miners Village, and also Tom Bowman, who's going to give us a really interesting presentation on on stamps and Pennsylvania history. We are running this as a webinar format. So, so the three of us have access or have our cameras on. And if you have questions, you could raise your hand, or you can put something in the chat or in the Q&A. And then as we go through the program, if there's something immediate, we can pause and have Tom answer, or we can handle questions at the end. And also just to know, we will be recording this program. So if you do choose to ask a question, it will be recorded. So without further ado, again, I want to welcome Tom Bowman. Tom is the vice president of the Wyoming Valley Stamp Club and ambassador to the American Society, through the American Philatelic Society. And we're thrilled to have Tom here. And I also want to give a shout out to Helen Grebsky for helping set up this program with us today. So thanks again for joining us, and I'll turn it over to Tom.
Okay, thank you. And I will want to appreciate everybody coming on board and listening to this. Helen has put a lot of time in, so has Bode. So here we go. Let's see if we can get this. Well, we got to share first. Here we go. And bingo. As soon as I go full screen, here we go. Famous founding fathers, other images which you'll recognize, and other famous people of Pennsylvania. We start out with William Penn, and not only did William Penn plan and develop Philadelphia, he had treaties with the Native American Indians. He had a lot of good relations with them, but he also did much more. This stamp was issued October 24th, 1932, for the 250th anniversary of the frame of government of Pennsylvania, which helped inspire the U.S. Constitution. And it was like a year after the 200th anniversary and 50th of the founding of Pennsylvania on March 4th. In 1938, one of many stamps were issued for Benjamin Franklin. He also started a postal service, among other things, for our new nation. Now, George Washington has the most United States stamps with his portrait on it. Ben Franklin is second with 130. This set was issued on July 4th, 1974, and was a starting point for the bicentennial issue of stamps. Congress Hall, as you can see, first Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, part of it, and Independence Hall in Philadelphia. This 1976 pane of 6 stamps were issued for the signing of the Declaration of Independence. One of the signatories is that of Benjamin Rush. Now, I don't know if my pointer will point him out here. He's right there. That's Benjamin Rush. I have to point it out, he's the founder of Dickinson College, where my twin daughters and my money went to school. The state flag was also issued in 1976 as part of a sheet of all the 50 states' flags. Now, these are things that are familiar with Pennsylvania. Our state, the first of these being another Pennsylvania stamp with the state flower and the ruffed grouse, Mount Laurel being the state flower. It was issued in 1982. The next stamp was issued in 1987 as part of the North American Wildlife Series. Features the woodchuck or our groundhog. Again, our state flag and that of the white-tailed deer were issued in 2011 as a 6-part series of state flag stamps. All 50 states were on there. And last but not least is the Greetings from Pennsylvania stamp that was issued twice in the 34-cent and 37-cent amounts, showing the Liberty Bell and the Gettysburg Cannon. To start with some of the famous people of Pennsylvania was Daniel Boone, who was born in the Ole Valley of Berks County, and it was issued in 1968. Next one to the right is James Buchanan, former president. He was on 2 stamps, one of which you'll see later. This one from 1986, a series of presidents. This was a free frank letter from the postmaster of Wilkes-Barre, PA, to John M. Reed. The next 2 slides will explain why I put this in. Dated in 1844, opening that folded up letter very carefully, you see it's dated and everything else here. It said briefly, it was a support of the John Reed's nomination to the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania of the United States by President John Tyler. John Reed withdrew his nomination after getting it from John Tyler. Attorney Reed's grandfather, George Reed, was one of only 6 men who signed both the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States. Back in 1844, the postmasters influenced a bit more political power back then. 1952, a stamp was issued honoring Betsy Ross in the making of the first American flag of the United States. Elizabeth Ross was a native of Philadelphia. Her husband and George Washington didn't think she could make a 5-point star and weren't going to approve her original copy of what she wanted to do. She took out a piece of paper, folded it, made some cuts, produced a star. Her and her husband, George Washington, and her husband gave the okay to continue with the flag. Now, these next series of stamps, the first one being the Progress in Woman, Lucretia Mott, who is on the far right of that stamp. I'll put my pointer on her here. That's her right there. Was born in Philadelphia and was one of many, many people, Quakers, who helped start Swarthmore College in Swarthmore, PA. Over here is John Vincent Bennett, a 2-time winner of the Pulitzer Prize. He was born in Bethlehem, PA. Now you'll see the home below James Buchanan of Wheatland. And that was the home of James Buchanan. And as I told you earlier, this is the second stamp that was issued. Well, actually the first stamp. The second was issued prior that you saw. Now, George Catlin was born in Wilkes-Barre, 1796, a painter of Native American Indians. He is the only native Wilkes-Barrean or Luzerne Countyan whose name appeared on a stamp. No image, but just below, right here on the first day of issue, that bar, there's his name. Other famous Americans born in Pennsylvania was Louisa May Alcott, writer from Germantown, Pennsylvania. Of course, her book, Little Woman. Stephen Foster was a songwriter from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Oh, Susanna, my old Kentucky home. Ethelbert Nevin was a pianist and a composer, was better known for what he did when he moved to Germany, but he was still from Pennsylvania. Some more famous Pennsylvanians who were born actually in Pennsylvania. Elijah Kane, Philadelphia, an Arctic explorer. Robert Perry, Crescent, PA, claimed to be the first man to find geographic North Pole. Andrew Mellon, Pittsburgh, a banker, philanthropist, art collector. Henry O. Tanner, Pittsburgh, a painter. Next to him on the right is Robinson Jeffers, Pittsburgh, a poet. Next row down on the left, first one, Tommy and Jimmy Dorsey from Shamokin, musicians and composers. Ethel Waters, next to them, from Chester, was an actress and jazz vocalist. Then Samuel Barber, Westchester, composer of operas. Then we have Pearl Buck of Bucks County. She was the first American woman to win the Nobel Prize in Literature. Frank C. Bach of Benton. He was a missionary committed to literacy. His slogan was, "Each one, teach one." Rachel Carson, Springdale, a marine biologist. Others who lived in Pennsylvania. Of course, we know Dwight Eisenhower. His brother Milton lived in State College, was a president of State College, University Park, Penn State at one time. George C. Marshall, Uniontown, Nobel Prize winner for the Marshall Plan. John Priestley, Northumberland, discovered oxygen, a Dickinson graduate. Victor Herbert, composer, conductor. And the arts of Pennsylvania. Gilbert Stuart, green stamp there on the left, Germantown, well known for his portraits. In fact, the famous portrait that he did of George Washington is still on our dollar bills today. The Academy of Fine Arts, Philadelphia founder Charlie Peel, and the building below it. That's in Philadelphia. John Audubon, ornithologist from Valley Forge. His home down there is still standing. Then the next three are all painters. On the top is Mary Cassatt. The rowboats are Thomas Eakin and John Sloan. He's from Lock Haven. All three of them went to the Philadelphia Academy of Arts. Performing arts and works of arts. Of course, some of us youngsters still remember W.C. Fields of Derby, actor, comedian. The Barrymores of Philadelphia, actors. Andy Warhol of Pittsburgh, filmmaker, painter. Think of Campbell's Soup every time I see that guy. Martha Graham, Pittsburgh, choreographer and dancer. And then Alexander Calder, Lawton, PA. He was a sculptor, One of the guys in our stamp club goes to work every day. The last sculptor on the right. He walks under it every day out in Pittsburgh. Of course, you know Jimmy Stewart from Indiana. And again, there's Mr. Rogers, children's TV. He is from Pittsburgh. And then there's things that make you think of Pennsylvania. The Land Grant stamp of 1955 featuring Michigan State and Penn State. The steel industry, Bethlehem, Pittsburgh, Steelton, others. The petroleum industry, the Drake's oil well near Titusville. Interesting fact on that one, there's another area I just discovered on a couple of covers called the copper tact, pronounced like the duct tape tact. String of oil wells that are still producing but are capped right now. That's in Cooper Tack. Then you have the Girard College of Philadelphia for the education of orphans, grade 1 through 12. The impact of sports. Pop Warner, football, coach Jim Thorpe, who's below him. Honus Wagner, baseball, Philadelphia. Roberto Clemente, again, baseball, Pittsburgh. Jim Thorpe, Olympian, football. And of course, you have to say the town of Jim Thorpe, which was named after him. Famous Pennsylvania crafts. Pennsylvania tollware of the Pennsylvania Dutch. And of course, Amish quilts. As you can see, 2001 that came out. And of course, being a stamp collector and a philatelic person, this was a stamp issued for stamp collecting, 1972 with Ben Franklin. An interval, 1976, was held in Philadelphia, a stamp exhibition. Excuse me. There are more postage stamps for our state, which would make for an interesting topic for someone to collect, even postal history. This is the only cover I have, personally, of Eckley. The postmark was discontinued in 1957. At that time, the Weatherly Post Office took over distribution and collection of mail. Now, when I say it was discontinued, the post office may still be there, much like you have in our area. But it's considered a dead post office because another postal office took over the distribution of mail. It's like the mountaintop office up north of me is all handled by Wilkes-Barre. A little more postal history. This is a postcard showing the coal shipped by train from Stockton to Trenton, New Jersey by the East Sugarloaf Coal Company. And it was going to Lindbergh, Keith. My eyes are ready. But it shows you every car, what was in each car, the type of coal from 1876. This is a 1888 cover from to B.F. Crispin, Esquire, owner of Crispin Valve, from the Cox brothers. Now, this one has a little meaning to me. My aunt, by marriage, was a Cox. She lived in Frackville before she married my uncle. Catlin Post Office was closed in 1959 as the Drums Post Office took over handling of the mail for the area. From what I told, you never wanted to get a letter from that postmark. That's where, from what I was told, all the bad boys went. And again, thanks for inviting us, the Wyoming Valley Stamp Club. you have any pictures, I'll just minimize this so we can go back and look or answer any questions you may have.
Thanks, Tom. Does anybody have any questions for Tom? You can raise your hand or put something in the chat or the Q&A. Well, Tom, tell us how you got into stamp collecting, and is there a particular stamp in your collection that has more meaning for you?
Excuse me. Well, I got into it as part of Boy Scouts. I got a merit badge for stamp collecting. I continued it for a little while in sports and school and, you know, marriage, children. It took a while for me. I did it briefly in that time, but it took a while. The special stamp was the first one I ever went to the post office to buy. The 4-cent Shiloh stamp of 1962. Still have it. Then I got more into the postal history of stamps, or what stamp collectors call the philatelic research, where I, you know, look at covers. Like I have one right here. I'll just grab this right now. Doesn't mean much, but here's this one I was telling you about Cooper's Track, Pennsylvania. Look it up, you know, how it got there from here or there. The cachets that are put on stamps sometimes are interesting. This was a lady who put a stamp out. That was one of the first pictures transmission from a computer onto an envelope. And that was back, that's dated 1964. So, okay, we got a question here. Oh no, okay. I missed her question, but she said something about Catlin.
Well, there was a note in the chat from Sarah Piccini, and she's with the Lackawanna County or Lackawanna Historical Society, and their headquarters is in the Catlin House in Scranton. So she said it was great to see that.
Oh, okay.
And then we have a question.
Very good.
From Helen, who was asking where the Eckley post office was located. And it isn't there anymore, but the last—
No idea.
I'm sorry? Yeah, the last location of the—
I said I can just tell you it was 1959.
Oh, yeah. But the last location of the post office was in the Sharp House. And I believe, John, was it before that? Was it in the company store for a little while? I know, like in the 19th century.
Yeah, for briefly, it was in the company store, and then probably about 1900, it turned over to the Sharp House.
Yeah, the Sharp House was is one of the mine owners' houses, the largest of the mine owners' houses at Eckley, built by Richard Sharp. And he lived there through his tenure at Eckley until I believe the 1870s when he moved to Wilkes-Barre. And at some point after that, the house that was lived in as a single family was then subdivided into 5 or 6 apartments in the post office.
Yeah, what I have on record is that post office was closed in 1959.
Okay, do we have any other questions for Tom? Well, Tom, how big is your collection, or is that something you're not supposed to ask of a stamp collector?
Well, no. You can ask, just don't ask the value.
No,
behind me, you can see some of my stuff. I'm working right now on a bunch of Pennsylvania covers. Its stack started this thick, it's down to here. And I've been working on this for 2 months. This one's from York. It's an advertising cover for a safe.
Okay.
Can you see? Okay. And a lot of them haven't been scanned in yet. And I scan in on a different computer and then go into here. I have a cabinet full of research and stamps. I have this whole room with nothing but stamps I built in my basement.
And do you have a particular interest? Where does Pennsylvania history sort of fall within the stamps that you collect?
Well, you know, living in this state, traveling all over this state, I collect all Pennsylvania covers that I can get my hands on, within reason. There is a monetary limit to some of these things. Mm-hmm. I found one recently that was written from from Plymouth, Pennsylvania to, what's the name of that? Beach, down on Route 11, to a canal lock I never knew existed. Beach Haven, I think it's Beach Haven. And I never knew there was a canal lock there. So I drove down there one day just to look around, and sure enough, there used to be a remnants on the old, what they called Schuylkill Canal.
Wow.
No, sorry, Susquehanna Canal.
And we have a couple more questions. Helen is asking, what is the status of the Ampersite stamp?
Next question. I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. I will say there was a series of stamps which depicted a coal miner, mm-hmm. but he was from Kansas, and it was nothing to do with this area. And I didn't want to start, as I said to somebody, I didn't want to start a fight between the Bitamites and the Anthracites.
Well, thank you for that.
By Tunis coal.
Yeah. Well, there was a ceremony for the unveiling of that stamp in Wilkes-Barre because of the coal miner on it.
Yes.
And then there's another question from Schulte. Are there any particular stamps you are hunting for, or ones that you have been happy to recently find?
Well, as far as U.S. stamps go, I could spend another $5 million if I wanted to get them all. They're just too expensive. So I'm happy with the ones I get. Lately, I've been collecting what I call boo-boos, which are errors, freaks, or oddities of U.S. stamps. The color shift, I do have the only, as they say, misperforated pre-cancel of Wilkes-Barre, of the half-cent Franklin issue that I showed you earlier. It's the only one known, and I have it. How I acquired it, I have no idea. I really don't remember how I got it. I found it again. I had it certified by APS, or American Philatelic Society. So, and the pre-cancel, if you remember getting those Reader Digest cards, they had 2 lines and Pleasantville, New York on them. In between, that's a pre-cancel.
Well, great.
But I'm going to a stamp show next month to pick up some more covers, actually.
Well, thanks. Does anybody else have any other questions or comments or thoughts for Tom? Well, great. Well, I want to thank you all for joining us, and a special thanks to Tom for helping us out today with a really interesting program, and Helen for helping us set it up. Let me remind you to keep an eye on our Facebook and website pages for the reopening sometime later this spring. And also, if you've seen the emails that we've sent out for this program, that we've got another one coming up at the end of the month on the 27th with some scholars from Ireland and Wales looking at connections with traditional music and our region. So be sure to check that out. It's a $5 per screen program. And tickets are available on website, and we'll be sending out another set of emails for that program again soon. So anyway, thanks again. Oh, we've got a hand up. Let me see. Oh, I think it was withdrawn. So anyway, so thanks again. Whoop, hey, there's a hand that keeps going up and down. Maybe they're clapping. Okay, well, anyway, thanks again, everyone, and thanks, Tom, for joining us today. And be sure to look for our other programming coming up at the end of the month. So good night, everyone, and have a happy Charter Day. Bye. All right.